goes on in the mind of someone who wants to end their life? Suicide is often referred to as a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The key is to get the right help, but not everyone recognizes that in time. Our next two guests know that firsthand. Please welcome Linda Sosa and Sahar Paz. Good morning. Linda, at the top of the show, I referred to a Facebook post where the person mentioned that somebody who could be suicidal can come in different ways. Mental illness is one of them. There's a genetic component. This has been a struggle in your family for quite some time.
Yes, 3 of my 4 children have a mental illness. And my nieces and nephews, some of them have it, and I have it.
Yeah, you have a son who at 28 took his life.
Yes. And none of his friends knew that he was even suicidal. I knew earlier, and we'd helped him, but then he stopped taking the medication, and no one knew when it came back.
Yeah, and it's interesting is people think they might recognize when someone might do something like that, but oftentimes that person throws you off because they're happy. They've made a decision.
We are really good at hiding it. Yeah. We've made a decision, or we don't want to be a burden. And one thing you just said, it's not that someone who tries to kill themselves, they're not trying to kill themselves, they're trying to end the pain.
End the pain,
and that's
exactly.
a huge difference.
Yeah, yeah. You attempted suicide.
Many times. When I turned 36, suddenly I felt these urges to drive off a bridge in my car, and I thought, well, that was kind of odd. And so I went to therapy, and then for the next 2 years, I had continuous suicidal ideations saying, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself. I was this little person in here fighting this body that everything it could do, and I tried over and over and over again, and I guess I'm not very good at it.
But with the mental illness component, that's the thing that's so hard. You can't just snap out of it.
No.
You have a great life. You're a travel agent. You've traveled the world. And in the middle of Fiji, you could still feel suicidal. You're like, it's not about the stuff out here. It's about what's in your head.
Absolutely. And this year, since March, I've been battling a lot of ideation. It had been stable for so many years, 20-some years, and it came back. And I just found out I'm going to be a grandmother for the first time. And
that's exciting to you.
It's exciting to me. So everyone says, well, now you have something to live for. It's like the chemicals don't understand that.
Yeah.
I still feel suicidal.
You've always had something to live for. It's just that the chemicals are getting in the way. Sahar, that suicidal moment for you came in a different way.
Yes. It did. It was at the age of 11 when I started to picture a gun to my head as peace and relief.
11?
Yes.
What were you going through that made you that depressed?
A big move from the Middle East to the U.S. and then being bullied. Bullying and shame was a lot of it. So from the outside, the messages that were coming in, my inner voice, my brain accepted them. They became on replay. So by the time I was 13, I was cutting. By the time I was 15, I had my first overdose. And then at the age of 25, I had a suicidal trilogy and came very close to my death. And they had many solutions. One was take all these pills. Another was just therapy. And the third was a mix of both that really worked for me.
Yeah. And what was that mix for you?
It was cognitive behavior therapy. So a lot of what my practice in my book is based on is that. And for me, it was labeling the voices inside. So when Psychic Phyllis comes in and say, Sahar, there's no way you're going to make it in this lifetime. Shut it down now.
Yeah.
Or Black and White Betty comes in and says, nah, you're a loser, always a loser. You should be ashamed of yourself. So for me, it's such a hard, heavy topic. To talk yourself into death is that you have to have a very powerful voice. So if you can switch that voice around, maybe make light of it by naming these things inside, it helps you understand.
Them, so them controlling you.
Yes,
I want to go back to when you were 11. I would think as an 11-year-old, I'm sure your parents would think that you go to them and say, hey, these people are picking on me in school, or going to a teacher, or going to a counselor. Why did you internalize it?
One, I didn't speak up about it. So did they know? No, we did the hiding, right?
Why? But why did you not speak up?
It was shame.
Okay.
It was a shame. It was what is wrong with me. And I will say that with the relationship with my father, those were the same messages. So it became internal. I was to blame. Yeah. I am the burden, right? Yeah. So a lot of times it's hard to see because whoever's suicidal might be smiling in your face. But as jobs, as mentors, parents, educators, poke a little bit. Ask a little bit. Keep asking.
Because I would bet you came across as you're just such a good girl.
Yes,
that's Sahar. She was smart and she's such a good girl. We don't have to worry about her.
Yes,
but you were worried about you.
Yes.
Also, friends should be asking. You listed all these other people, but the friends are the people that we're with most, and everyone's afraid to just say, "Are you okay?"
Yeah, but I think herein lies part of the problem. What little I know of you, I can relate you to a friend of mine in school. Would I have known you had a problem? Would I have known you had a problem?
Not until high school. Then it was very evident, and I was lost in the system.
Yeah.
I mean, I would show up and have, bandages.
Yeah.
I know what's going on, but I was lost
Yeah,
in the
and
system.
Linda, you're right here. All right, 13 reasons why. One of your issues with it is that if you're in the space that you're in right now, it's a trigger.
Yes. I had to make a decision, and I talked with other people that work on suicide prevention with me, and I've decided not to see it because it could be a big trigger for me. And my concern is, it's great to start a conversation with healthy teens, but a lot of teens are not healthy. The figures in 2015 said 18% had seriously thought about suicide and 9% had attempted.
Wow.
And
you have an analogy of a glass.
Yes. If you have a glass and you pour 13 cups or whatever in it, it'll be okay. But if that glass is already half full of water because of the mental illness, you pour that in, it's going to overflow. And it's not any one of those 13 things, it's the fact that it's all that plus the mental illness together. And that's what happened with my son. Different things happened, but he already had the mental illness underlying it. And Christmas Day, it just overflowed. And he had the plan. He hadn't planned on doing it then, but he had a plan.
Yeah. And Sahar, 13 Ways for You?
I've watched it in a way, to me, it looks like a murder mystery if I would look at it from a film perspective.
Kind of entertainment.
But then when I look at it in terms of being a teenager, and you look at the
Going
show
back
and
to your
say,
11-year-old self.
And the teenagers that I work with, it looks like dramatic. There's the scary music and so on and so forth. But what it feels inside of a teenager's mind and body are these things. And what it points out clearly is that voice that takes you to your deathbed, often it's filling the sentences of what people in your community, your peers are saying. And I think the show has a great depiction of that, of, hey, your voices stick with me and it's what beats me up. So that's good, but it is a piece of fiction, and it can be very triggering.
Hard to differentiate if you're, I think, in that space as that you almost identify with that person.
Yes, ma'am.
You wrote your book, Find Your Voice, and you speak to schools and organizations, and that in itself is a great part of therapy for you. A great part of therapy for you also is to talk about it.
Talk about it, both to the public, but also I speak with a lot of legislators. And I got a bill passed in 2013 in Texas mandating that teachers are trained on suicide and mental health awareness.
They're the gatekeepers in many ways.
They're with the kids more often
than we are. During the school
as
year.
parents.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
When we come back, we have several people in our live studio audience who have questions about this topic that many people don't like to talk about, right? But talking about it could save lives. Next.